All right, welcome back to this mythology kind of introductory unit. We're going to pick up where we left off last time, where we talked about the fact that a myth is something that is believed to be true by the original tellers, but that was passed down through an oral culture, which created variants. Okay. Because of that, when I'm telling these stories, there's a good chance that there might be a different version of this story that you've heard before. And that's totally fine. In fact, in class, people bring that up all the time while I'm telling the story. And I encourage that because I need you to realize that there are sometimes thousands upon thousands of variants in this. I've taught this class long enough that I've heard a lot of them. Now, there's still some, though, that I've never been exposed to because my brain's just not big enough to contain all the different variants of these stories. Now, that means that you might know a version that I don't know, but that doesn't mean either one of us is right or wrong. It just means that we've been exposed to a different manifestation, basically, of that myth. Okay. If we could trace it all the way back to the original, we have a better idea of what it was that those people believed. And we'll get into that to it in a second. But at the very least, what we do see is that they continue to pass these stories down, even as they change, because they are traditional tales. Okay. And we need to understand that a traditional tale means it's a story that is a tradition, and a tradition is something that we do because it means something to us, right? If you go to your grandma's every Christmas, it's because somebody loves grandma. And hopefully, I hope you're amongst those people, right? That's why you keep doing that. It's something that means something to your family, right? And so a traditional tale is a story that got passed down, not just to entertain people, though they are very entertaining, but because it actually meant something to them. Okay, so the stories get passed down. Yes, they've been changed, but they continue to be passed down anyway because they meant something to those people. Okay, next thing I want you to do is write down this definition from William Burkett. It's a really good, solid definition for what a myth is. Because if you Google mythology, you're going to find all kinds of different definitions. This is one we're going to use as a framework for this class. And it's fantastic as long as you understand it. So I want you to write this down and then pause this video and see if you can put this into your own words in your notes, right? So a myth is a traditional tale with secondary partial reference to something of collective importance. Fantastic. What does it mean? All right. I don't know if you actually paused the video or not, but if you did, hopefully you have some kind of definition there. And I would say what you need to understand is there is a primary and a secondary function to myth. Okay. The primary function is that whole idea of a cultural story. Okay. Hope it didn't move for you. There you go. So that idea of that traditional tale, that cultural tale, it gets passed down from generation to generation. It was originally believed and it means something to those people. It has to be that. The secondary function is the stuff we usually think about when we think about mythology, but it doesn't have to be there. Okay, so this can be stuff like the religious concepts, so the idea of gods and goddesses, which are super important to the people who believe in them. So are they going to pass them down? Absolutely. It's not what makes it a myth, but it's a big part of so many myths because so many cultures have deep religious views, right? You're going to see stories about natural events, which are something that surround us. So there's something that we're going to tell stories about. Psychological archetypes of what is a hero, what is a villain, historical or political or legendary events, that those are going to find their way into myths because they're important to the people. We think about them when we think about myth because they happen so often, and we're going to get into that too, but they're not what makes it a myth. Okay. So wrap your mind around that. Primary, secondary function. Another thing you need to understand is how culture then plays a role. And there's three things you need to know: belief, value, and custom. A belief is something that we are convinced is true. A value is something that inherently we want, and a custom is something that we do without thinking. Okay, and it's hard for us to really wrap our minds around that whole custom thing because we literally do them without thinking. So when I grew up, I actually grew up overseas. My parents are international missionaries, and so customs were different in Belarus, where I grew up, than they were in America. So they stuck out a little bit more to me, and they would to you too, right? Like in Belarus, if you were like a Belarusian school, when you went into the school building, you would not actually wear your shoes. Okay, that was unheard of. They wouldn't do that. In fact, if they saw of you walking around in your shoes, they'd think it was highly disrespectful because you didn't do that, right? They would actually have like a shoe cubby room, kind of like imagine the McDonald's play place where you have all the little shoe cubbies, only a massive one in a room. Everybody would go in, they'd drop off their shoes, they'd put on their slippers, and they'd walk around all day. For us, that would seem super weird. For them, it was super normal because that was a custom. It was something that they did without thinking. Now, you take all three of these words, belief, value, custom, you put them together, and that's what a culture is. A culture is a shared set of beliefs, values, and customs. Now, this can be super broad, like the American culture. We're going to really have to stretch to see what those shared beliefs, values, and customs are. But at home, you're going to see it's a lot closer. That's what mythology reflects, and we'll talk about that next.